Discovery Days class. I did start recording. So just my final announcement about changing your screen name to just your first name or your initials because we are recording. But we are in ag marketing and risk management, and Rich and Robin are going to lead us in this session, and I am going to watch the chat box for questions. So take it away.
All right, and like she said, the chat is open if you have questions along the way, and we'll take care of those. We're going to start out a little bit with a presentation first, and then we'll have the marketing exercise and simulation after that. My name is Rich Llewellyn. I'm an extension assistant here in the Ag Econ department, and have been here for about 14 years. Robin's been here about 6 or 7 years, I forget exactly. She's an extension associate and does a lot of our farm policy and farm programs. So if your folks are trying to figure out the CFAP program, she's the one to help them with that. We are not taking attendance on the question that just popped into the chat there, so we're glad to have you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and go in and show a few slides for a few minutes, and then we'll have the exercise. The slides kind of set up the exercise we're going to be doing on marketing grain sometimes before harvest. That's even possible, and so I'm going to talk a little about that and just share this. So with that, we should be now good to go here. So there's our email, and I sent out the slides to everybody.
Okay, I've got a Zoom going, so I can't talk long.
Questions along the way, let me know, and we'll just move on here. And why am I not moving on? All right, we'll try that again. You'd think by now I'd have Zoom figured out, but obviously I don't. So now we'll try it. Just a little bit on what's going on in agriculture right now, and y'all are probably familiar with that, but we have low commodity prices. A lot of that's due to the COVID-19 effects on demand, lower demand for beef and pork and some of the grains and stuff like that, but we have high production and high supply. We have a trade war that's been affecting export demand, and we have lower net farm income than what it used to be in the good old days. The good old days being 2007 to 2014. We also have issues of credit availability. Farmers are having more trouble getting loans for operating loans, and also, buying land and machinery and stuff like that even. Land values have gone down a little bit in the last few years. Not terribly, not like the 1980s, but it's still getting weak. There's difficulty selling livestock right now because of the packing plants. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with supply chain. Got home consumption versus restaurant consumption. The schools have been closed. We have reduced output at the packing plants and a whole lot of policy uncertainty. What's going to happen as far as what the government's doing? Net farm income, you can kind of see here. We had very high net farm income nationally for several years, and then it dropped. It's kind of recovered. And here we are right now. The 2020 forecast was in February. They haven't come out with a new one there, so I expect that will decline instead of going up. But we are looking at lower net farm income than we used to. Just was told I need to talk more. Oh, I'm sorry, talking to the microphone is what I thought it said. So what do you do to kind of handle some of that? One is be a low-cost producer. Low machinery costs, low land costs, low variable inputs. There's a phrase that I have a friend of mine that uses. He says production is king, and an example is 2016. We had very high wheat production. Some people had over 100 bushels an acre that year, but some people were more normal, 50 bushels an acre. Well, normally 50 bushels an acre is a pretty good year and you do okay, but that was a terrible year. If you only got 50 bushels an acre of wheat in 2016 with the very low price that happened because we had a high supply, you weren't doing very well. And so production is important. You can also deleverage, which means to pay down debt and try to restructure loans, make them longer term with lower payments right now. lock in margins. And by that, I mean, when you see an opportunity, maybe grain prices pop up a little bit and fertilizer prices happen to be down, you go ahead and you lock in a price for the fertilizer and for the grain. And then buy crop insurance. The last thing there, sell risk premium. In other words, sell grain ahead of harvest. Now, my dad never did that. He was always concerned he might not have the grain to deliver if he sold it ahead of time. And so there are some things you got to be careful of, but that is one really good thing. And so that's one of the things that's going to be part of the simulation. You're going to have a decision about crop insurance. Should you buy it or not? If you do, what level do you want? And then we're going to give you a couple opportunities to market grain ahead of time. Selling corn in April when the corn isn't going to be harvested till October, and selling more in July perhaps. So just a few things here. Using crop insurance with these marketing tools. We're not going to have things like hedging on the simulation, but there are a number of things that you can do in addition to simply forward contracting. Cash sales are what a lot of farmers do though. They just harvest the grain and then they may sell some at harvest if they need some money then, or maybe they save it and wait till the first of the year and then sell it because they're needing money, you know, for some operational expenses or something. So there are a lot of different ways to market grain. And that's what we're doing today, is looking at grain marketing example. A lot of these things can work for livestock too. Be careful you don't get too overconfident with your marketing skills. And then one thing that's really important that folks don't think about, a lot of times they think, oh, marketing, that's the most important thing. Managing your costs is something you actually have more control over. And I'm just putting that in there for you to think about. So here's a survey. It's 10 years old, but I think it still holds. If you were to do it again, I'd expect that you see that marketing line there. 49% said, oh, that's the thing that makes me the money. So it's important, and I agree it's important, but there's other things here that you can be doing. Buying used machinery might be one of the things. Seed populations and fertilizer levels, input costs, getting these lower input costs, those things are important too, so don't forget them. This is an interesting graph, and if you stop and think about it, there was quite a few people that really didn't know what was going on, because the question is, I generally do a better job marketing my crops than my neighbors, but 60% said they were better, 40% said they weren't. There's some folks that think they're better and they're really not. They're a little over optimistic, and I think that is often the case. This just illustrates what I was saying about costs. We have corn returns for 2018, and I don't have the 2019 data yet, but I think it'll show the same thing. And we have three columns here. The high 1/3, this is the top third of profitability. And then the middle third of the farms as far as profitability, and then the bottom third. And what makes the difference here? Well, you can see the price, a little bit different, but there's not much difference between these less profitable farms and the most profitable farms. It's pretty close to the same, which kind of suggests maybe marketing isn't that terribly important. The yields are definitely different. And so the better farmers have higher yields, but they don't even get the highest prices here. Come on down to the bottom here. Net returns to management. This is a tough time farming. It's tough to make a profit, but these good farms actually showed a profit on corn in 2018. The poorer farms, the less profitable ones, they showed a big loss. And even the middle farms had a pretty good sized loss. What makes the difference here? Well, a little bit of it's revenue because of yields. It's not the marketing and not the price, but lower variable costs. Look at that. A lot higher here for the low farms than they are for the good farms. Lower fixed costs, same thing, except for the land charges. The poorer farms have lower land charge, probably because they're farming poorer ground. The machinery costs, same thing. Lowest cost for the good farms, highest cost for the less profitable. And so total costs are what really make a difference here. Just to point that out, that's something you can control, and it does make a difference. Now, moving on. Multi-peril crop insurance, just a brief introduction to it. It protects against a variety of things: adverse weather conditions, fire, plant disease, wildlife damage, there's a whole bunch of stuff. The most common thing would be dry weather in Kansas. That's a big deal. And we had that in 2012. So that's what we're concerned about generally, although other things can also cause a problem. Now, this doesn't include hail insurance. You have to buy that separately, and we're not going to include that in the simulation. So a few definitions. The premium is what the farmer pays to get the insurance coverage, and you're going to make a decision. You're going to have a choice between no premium, in other words, no insurance, or pay $38,000 for a lower level of insurance, or $68,000 in premium for a higher level of crop insurance. The higher the level, the better coverage you have. So if you have a loss, you get more paid back, but it costs more too. That's the premium. The indemnity is what gets paid if you have a loss. Okay, so if we have a drought, if you have a fire, you get paid based on the guarantee, which is down below there, and based on how much insurance you bought. The APH is actual production history for the farm. It's used to set the yield and the revenue guarantees. There's two types of coverage. We're only going to use revenue insurance this time, but there's also yield insurance where you only insure the yield, you don't worry about the price. Revenue insurance looks at yield and price, and that's the most common type of insurance anymore. Okay, the coverage level is the amount of insurance coverage that you choose. You can choose from 50% up to 80%. We're going to have in the exercise 70% or 80%. You can choose, or no coverage is the choices we're going to give you for that. And then there's a projected price, which is set via the futures market. They take the last few days of February for the summer crops, for corn, for soybeans, for grain sorghum. And then they use that in setting the guarantee. And the guarantee is how much you are insured for. And so if your actual revenue or actual yield falls below that guarantee, you're going to get some indemnity. You're going to get a payment based on how far below that guarantee is you are. Right. So a little more here. Yield protection just pays when the yields are low. It doesn't take into account the price. Revenue protection is when the revenue is low. Now that could be because of low revenue, that could be because of low price, or it could be because they're both low. Okay, there's two different types of revenue protection. One is with a harvest price included, and one is with this HPE, the harvest price exclusion, where it's not included. It's the same, but it has lower premiums since it only pays on the revenue using the expected price, not the price at harvest. Now in 2012, if you bought this, you could have been in trouble. Even if you had insurance, you might not have got very much, because in 2012, we had large yield losses, but the price went up, and it went up really high. Well, that pulled up the revenue, and if you didn't have this revenue protection with the harvest price, you didn't get as much coverage as you would have with the full coverage here using the harvest price. So if you exclude the harvest price, that can be a little dangerous sometimes. It's cheaper premium, but a lot of times when yields go down, prices go up, and so your revenue may not change much even though your yield was low. And then the last one is CAT, which is catastrophic coverage. There's a $300 fee for that, but you only get 50% coverage. So it doesn't cost much, but it doesn't cover very much either. It would only cover a year like 2012. So some marketing tools, and we're only going to use the first two for this simulation. But you have cash sales where you just sell grain after it's been harvested. That's what my dad did for years, and he did okay. You can do that, but you should have some kind of a plan of when you're going to make those cash sales and how it's going to work. Maybe do it seasonally when prices are generally higher. You're never going to hit the high part of the market though. Well, you might once in a while, but it's going to be pure luck for the most part. I've got a friend here in Riley County back in 2015 when the price of grain sorghum was going up and up and up because China was importing a bunch. He rode that thing all the way up because he knew it was going to go higher and he was going to get that high price, and then it started down and he thought, oh, it's going to come back. I don't want to sell it now because I didn't get the high price. and he wrote it all the way back down. The grain was still in the bin when the price went back down to what it had been. Don't do that. Another way you can do it is forward contracting, where you sell the grain through a contract with the elevator prior to harvest. And a lot of times doing that in April, May, it depends on the crop some, but a lot of times doing it ahead of time can get you a higher price. Now, the problem is you lock in that price, and if the price does go up, well, you're still locked in at that price. The other thing which caused my dad to worry, and so he never did this, was if you sell too much and don't have the grain in the field, then you've still got to deliver it. You're going to have to go buy it from somebody, and probably at a higher price, and deliver it to the elevator. The next one is hedging, where you would sell a futures contract. Those are 5,000 bushels generally, although they do have some mini contracts for 1,000. And then at harvest, you would buy back that futures contract and then sell the grain on the cash market. That kind of locks in the price if something called the basis doesn't change, and the basis is the difference between the futures price and the cash price. Okay, so if the basis stays the same, this hedging works pretty well. But if for some reason the basis went down and you had a lower cash price and the futures price was still up here, you wouldn't gain as much. This wouldn't help you as much as what you might think. The last one there is options, and there's what's called put and call options, and we don't have time to go into all those very much. But one thing for grain farmers that you could consider is buying a put option. That would protect you against the price going down, and it'd still give you the upside possibility or opportunity if prices did go up. Okay, so those are just some things that can be used. That's about all I'm going to have on that. Just a couple of other things before I turn it over to Robin for the simulation. Read, if you're involved in the grain markets or livestock markets, read a lot. There's a lot of places. I just suggested a few things, the High Plains Journal or Successful Farming. Other things like the Wall Street Journal know what's going on in the economy as well as what's going on in farming. There is a report by USDA. It's called the World Supply and Demand Estimates, or WASDE, and not just for the U.S., but for the world. It's helpful to know what's going on elsewhere, what's going on in Brazil right now, or Argentina, China. And then weather is a big factor. For grains, one of the best things you can look at is this last one, the ending stocks. How much do we expect to be left over at the end of the marketing year? Now for the corn, grain, sorghum, and soybeans, the marketing year ends August 31st. How much is going to be left over? Because that gets carried over into the next marketing year. And we have harvest and we have lots of grain then. So high ending stocks generally suggest low prices. Low ending stocks suggest high prices. And so that's something that pay attention to because it gives you a good idea of what prices might be. With that, Robin's going to take it here. I'm going to stop sharing. And she's going to go ahead and pull her stuff up.
I think before we do that, Rich, why don't we see if there's any questions?
That's an excellent idea. Thanks.
And if you have some, go ahead and type it in the chat, or go ahead and unmute your microphone if you have a question for Dr. Llewellyn.
Silence is not necessarily golden. Sorry, bad joke.
And so as you're typing in a question, or if you want to unmute your microphone and ask, just a couple comments on what Rich covered there. You know, we are in a world market these days. What happens in other countries really affects our prices for grain here in the U.S. And you'll see that in that WASDE report as we look at what's going to be imported and exported. Question there, Rich. Can you do, or?
Yes, I got it.
Okay.
Can you do a lot of the same things you did with crops in livestock? And so, yes, you can. You can go ahead and hedge. The forward pricing is not as easy as simply going to the elevator for livestock. There are a lot of livestock that are contracted, and so you have formula pricing in some of those cases. It depends on what market you're in and what you're trying to do there. But as far as the hedging and the options, that is, as well as the cash prices, you know, that's what my dad did for his cattle. He took them to the sale barn when it was about time to do that. So that's the short answer to that. If you have more, let me know. How do you protect your basis? One of the things is pay attention to the basis in your area and around your area. The tenant that farms my dad's farm actually hauls quite a bit of grain from up northwest of Manhattan down to Emporia. He's watching what's going on at different elevators and at different times of the year. And so he will often store his grain on farm and wait for a strong basis and a strong price. So on-farm storage is one of the best things you can do. Now, obviously that costs money. And so you have to weigh, is the cost of it going to pay for or is it going to be paid for with the gain you might have? But in many cases, that's the case anymore. And Robin, if you have anything on these, throw it out. Last one here so far, would you advise others to get crop insurance during this time? Yes, that would be the short answer. There may be cases where you might be able to or want to self-insure yourself, but in most cases, crop insurance is a fairly good idea. It's subsidized by the government, so the premium is not the full premium that you would pay because the government is subsidizing part of it. Now, the government subsidizes more at the lower levels of the insurance. So the 60% insurance is more subsidized than the 80% insurance. So you pay a higher rate for the 80%, not only because you're getting more coverage, but also you're paying more of the actual premium. And so that's something to consider also. But in most cases, it's a good idea. In fact, if you have loans on land or even machinery, a lot of times the bank or whoever has that loan and gave the loan to you would require you to have crop insurance in order to make sure you don't have a wipeout. How often does grain storage pay off? It depends on the years, but there are some years where it pays off quite a bit. 2016, when we had such a huge crop, if you could have stored some of that on the farm at harvest, the basis went way, way low. It did the same thing in 2010. Now, it's not every year that happens, but we had close to $1 difference in basis from previous years. It was $1 lower. The cash prices had fallen quite low because nobody really wanted to buy that final product there. And so some farmers paid for their storage, quite a bit of it, just in that 1 year. Would you rather do cash sales or sales before the grain is ready? I'd say yes. And let me explain that. I think both can be helpful. I think you should consider some forward sales before the grain is ready, but you don't want to sell all of it or all that you're expecting because you don't know how much you're going to get. As you'll see in the exercise Robin's going to do, we're only allowing you to sell up to 50%. We're going to give you an option of 25% or 50%. Obviously, in the real world, you could sell any percentage, but you probably don't want to sell it all. So you need to be a little careful with that. But generally speaking, you're going to have, in most years, have some kind of crop. Even in 2012, when we had such terrible weather, most farmers still had some yield. It wasn't a zero yield. So they still had some yield. And, you know, they could go ahead and get the price for that and didn't have to buy some extra then. Good questions. This is awesome. Wish we were in person. I enjoy it more. You probably enjoy it more, but this is great to do it this way.
All right. Any last questions for Rich before we move on to the activity? And if you think of some as we're going along too, go ahead and type them in the chat. We can circle back to some of these because what we wanted to do this morning for you was give you that kind of background presentation, but then the best way to learn is actually apply this. So this is where we're going to run through the activity, have you sell some grain, And if you have questions as you go along, we can talk about this material again. But I'm going to switch over and share my screen here. So the way we're going to do this, let me forward here. You are a farmer in Mitchell County, Kansas. Nothing special about Mitchell County, but we just picked one here. So you're going to produce and market corn. And to make the math simple, you're going to have 1,000 acres of corn that you'll be planting this year. And you have a historical APH, and Rich had gone through that. That's a crop insurance term. So the actual production history on your farm is 100 bushels per acre. Now, it's beginning of the year. You won't know how much corn will actually come out of this 1,000 acres until you harvest it next fall, obviously. So we have some probabilities here of what that crop might be. An average yield is 100 bushels. So 60% of you will have an average yield. A high yield will be 140 bushels an acre, and 20% of you will get that yield. But unfortunately, 20% of you will have a low yield of 40 bushels an acre. So just keep that in mind as we go through this activity. We'll do a random draw at the end of who gets what yield, but those are the 3 possibilities on this farm and the probabilities of each outcome. Now you're going to have 3 decisions to make throughout the year. Your first decision is what you're going to purchase for crop insurance, if any. You don't have to choose any. So that's going to be done on March 15th, and that's the real world. When you are planting spring crops, you have to decide on your crop insurance by March 15th. Then we're going to give you a decision point on April 15th, where I will show you a price that you could forward contract some grain for. And again, forward contract means you are going to be delivering your grain to the elevator at harvest time, but you are already locking in the price that you will get for that grain by what the elevator is offering on April 15th. On July 15th, you can do some more, and there'll be a different price at that time. Every day, these prices can fluctuate as far as what the local elevator will let you forward contract some grain at. So you will have those 2 decision points that you can forward contract some grain. You don't have to. And then on October 15th, we're assuming that's harvest time, and anything that you haven't forward contracted by that point will be sold at the cash price on that day. Now, in reality, you would probably not sell it exactly at the cash market on that day. You might store some for a while, maybe hold it till after January 1st for some tax purposes. But for this purposes, to keep it simple, you will be cash selling any grain on October 15th that you haven't forward contracted. Now, some rules for this. So as Rich said, we don't want you to sell all of your expected production because you could get that low yield and come up short on what you have obligated to deliver to the elevator. So we're going to let you sell up to 50% on forward contracts, and then the remainder would be sold at harvest at the cash price. So 1,000 acres, 100 bushels expected per acre gives you 100,000 bushels to sell. Now, again, 50% of that would be 50,000 bushels. So you can forward price up to 50,000 bushels of corn. If you happen to get that low yield, you still are going to come up a little short and will have to buy some grain to fulfill those contracts. So just keep that in mind as well as we go through. All right, so let's dive right into this decision 1. I'm going to explain it and then put the link in the chat that you can actually go in and make your decision. So here, the projected insurance price is $3.88, and this is reality. The 2020 price was set at $3.88. How that happens is looking at the futures market through the month of February and taking the average price of the futures market during that time. Now, your production costs we're including in here at $345 per acre. Over 1,000 acres would be $345,000. Why is that important? Just to know that is the cash that you're going to have to put out there to get this crop in the ground. So if you decide to do no crop insurance, it will cost you nothing, but you have no protection. you'll have to be spending this $345,000 to put this crop in. And if you'd have no yield or very low yield, you will have no guarantee to get any of that money back. Now, if you purchase 80% revenue protection, it's going to cost you $68,000 for this entire 1,000 acres, but you're guaranteed $310,000. So if you lose the crop or have a very low yield, you'll start getting a crop insurance payment that could add up to $310,000 if you lose the entire crop. If that's a little expensive, you can drop down to the 70% coverage level. The cost is $38,000, and it'll cover up to $270,000 of your revenue. So look at those choices. You're going to select A, B, or C, and I'm going to go ahead and put this link in the chat, and then you can click on the link, and it will ask you your name and then your choice. So as we go through these decision points, make sure you're typing your name in exactly the same each time.
Rob and I already put the link in.
All right, perfect. Rich is on top of it. So go ahead and click on that link, and again, type in your name, first and last name, and your crop insurance decision choice. No crop insurance being A, 80% revenue being B, and 70% revenue being C. And we'll just give you a couple minutes to do that and then move on to the next choice. And if you do have more than one viewing this presentation off the same computer, you're welcome to do that link twice and just fill it out for each person viewing.
We're up to about 41 and we still got a few coming in. So let's just wait. Yeah, there's a few more.
All right, give you just a minute. So go ahead and make a decision. If anyone's having any problems with that, go ahead and let us know in the chat and we can help you out as well. So we don't have any prizes this year. Last year when we did this in person, we had some prizes for who made the most money on their grain at the end. This time it'll be fame and glory. So, all right, Rich, should we move on?
We just had one pop in now, just maybe another minute here.
All right.
Maddox says they're having some trouble. We just had another one. We got about 6 more, it looks like.
Okay.
From what the participant list is.
Wait just a minute here.
There's another one. All right, I think we can go on here. Actually, you still can. We'll leave that link there and you can still pull stuff in or put stuff in for a few more minutes, but Robin, go ahead.
Okay. So our second decision is going to be on April 15th. So our crop is getting planted at this time. It's a wet spring. We're having some difficulty. The demand for corn is projected to be low this year due to some ethanol plants operating at a lower capacity. I think if you've been watching the markets or what's going on in the corn market right now, that's a definite reality with what's going on in our ethanol industry because of the low fuel prices. Livestock feed demand is also lower and exports are struggling. So we're projecting high ending stocks of corn this year. So your options are, we have a $2.90 per bushel price at our elevator that you can forward contract some grain at. Now here are your three options. If you forward contracted 25% of the expected crop, that'd be 2,500 bushels at $2.90. That's option A. You can forward contract 50% of that crop. That's 50,000 bushels, option B, or don't forward contract anything. Remember, you can only go up to 50,000 bushels because that's half of your expected crop. And you will have one more decision to make between now and harvest. So I'm going to put the link into the chat again. So this is, the survey will look the same, but this is our second decision point. So if you click on that link, again, put your name in exactly like you did last time, and then select option A, B, or C, depending on how much grain you want to forward contract at $2.90 a bushel. Or if you don't want to do any at this time, that's okay too. That would be option C.
And we've got them coming in.
All right. Now, just to reiterate again, if you do 50% of your expected crop, next time you won't be able to do any more because we're going to let you do up to 50%. If you did 25%, you'll get to do a little more next time if you want to. Just give you one more minute here and then we're going to move on. If you're having trouble, let us know.
We're up to about the same number we were last time, Robin. We'll leave it open, but go ahead and move on, I think.
Okay, so if you're still working on it, that's fine. The link's still open, but I'm going to go ahead and move on here. So decision 3, it's July 15th now. It's hot summer. The weather has dried up in late April with the rain that we had and that inhibited some planting is now gone. And we didn't have a whole lot of rain in May or June, so our crops are not looking too good. On the US level, they're projecting lower ending stocks. This weather's happening all across the country. Ethanol demand is recovering. Our plants are reopening again. So there's going to be a little more demand for corn production than we saw back in April. And livestock feed is picking up again. So right now, the elevator is going to let you forward contract at $3.60 per bushel. Now, again, going back to what you selected in the last decision, you may not have too much grain left to sell. So here would be the options. If you did not sell any grain in April, that last decision, you can now forward contract 25% of your expected crop, or you can do 50% of your expected crop at that $3.60 per bushel. Or if you want to just sell it all in cash at the end, you can do that. So A, B, or C, depending on if you didn't sell any grain. If you did already sell 2,500 bushels, you can forward contract another 2,500 bushels, or you can wait to not sell any. Or if you sold everything at 50,000 bushels last in April, you don't have any more grain to sell, you would have to choose option C. So again, A, B, or C, A being 2,500 bushels, B being 50,000, and C being 0 bushels. And I'll go ahead and put that link in the chat again. It's a different link than the last one, so don't click on the last one. My chat ran away on me here. Here we go. All right, so here's the link on the bottom there would be the last decision here on July 15th. Again, fill out your name exactly like you did in the last 2 decision points. Rich is in the background tabulating as we go here.
We're a little slower here.
Okay, again, in the chat, use the lower link or you're gonna get back into decision 2. So you want the one that ends with 9U. And we've simplified this quite a bit, just giving you a couple decision points here. But in reality, if you were the farmer planting this corn and making marketing decisions on this corn, you could be thinking about this decision every single day as far as what the forward contract is offering. So this is a very stressful, difficult thing to do. I actually went to K-State here to get my master's degree, and my dad said, well, that's perfect. You can market our grain for us. And I think the one thing I learned is I don't want to be in that position. Let dad make his decisions how he sees fit. But there's a lot of stress that goes into trying to figure out what the best marketing plan is for your operation.
Okay, it seems to have pretty well stopped. If they need to fill it in yet, they can, but go ahead and you can have Sherry get on while I tabulate this.
Okay, so now it's harvest time, October 15th. The price is $3.10 per bushel. So anything that was not sold earlier is going to get a $3.10 cash price. Again, 60% of you had an average yielding year of 100 bushels an acre. Some of you had a high yield at 140, and some will have a low yield at 40 bushels an acre. So we're gonna, as Rich is tabulating that in the background, we're gonna come back and show you the results in a little bit. But while he's doing that, we have a message for you from our undergraduate coordinator here in the Ag Econ department. And she's just going to talk a little bit about the programs that we have here at K-State. And for some of you that are looking at college opportunities, what might interest you that we have here. So take it away, Sherry. Oh, I think you're muted, Sherry. Oh, still can't hear you.
About now, can you
There
hear
you go. All right.
Sorry, I'll start over. I'm Sherry Hudson, and I'm the academic program coordinator for the Ag Econ Ag Business Department. And I'd just like to spend a few minutes talking with you about our program. You've got to experience this morning some of the things that our students learn and study and talk about in the classroom. We're going to talk first about the power of purple, the power of a degree from K-State and where that might take you and what you might do with that degree. I think there's a lot of potential. I think it's a very broadly marketable degree. You can work in all areas of agriculture and in all areas of business. Our students do a variety of things. Agribusiness is one of the top 5 career areas in the nation. So again, it tells you that if you get a degree in ag econ or ag business, you're not going to have any trouble finding employment. We have a 98% placement rate of our graduates, so the majority of them have jobs at graduation time. The average starting salary for our graduates this past year was $50,000. So that was average. So that tells you that some students, graduates made a little bit less and some made a little bit more. I would say, you know, by the time you might graduate from college, the average starting salary would certainly be significantly higher than that. So let's spend a few minutes talking about the potential. What kinds of things do students do who graduate from our program? About a fourth of the graduates go to work in the finance area where they're helping an individual or a company manage or invest their money. So many of them work in the banking industry, farm credit, another big employer of our graduates. Others are in the finance divisions of large companies and corporations like Cargill or John Deere or Tyson, helping them manage or invest their money. And in that same category, we lump insurance. So some students might sell crop insurance. Obviously, insurance is a way of protecting our assets or protecting our finances. And then the other one that falls in that category too is accounting. And accounting's different than finance. Accounting is more about the tracking of your money, the ins and outs of where it's going. And finance then is more about the investing or the managing of your money. The next area would be production agriculture. So a fourth of our students do return to production ag. So farming, ranching, feedlot management. Obviously, if you're in production agriculture, you're going to need skill sets in all areas of business. This morning, you were looking a lot at the marketing of your product, but you'll also need management and finance and accounting skills as well as the knowledge in agriculture, whether that's crops or livestock. And then the next area that many of our students go into, so the other 50%, so we've already talked about half of our students and where they go, and then the next half of them are spread out in a lot of different areas. One of those would be marketing. And when you hear the word marketing, traditionally you think sales, and many of our students go in direct sales like seed and fertilizer and implement dealerships. But marketing is a little bit broader than that. It's looking at consumer behavior. Why do people buy what they buy? How do you advertise it? Where do you place it on the shelf? And again, here, you're not limited to just marketing a product. You could be marketing a brand. You could be marketing a service. You could be promoting an individual. So it's broader than just a product. Next area might be human resources, and that's the managing of the people. So it's hiring and firing and training and fringe benefits that you're going to offer to employees. So some of our graduates that especially enjoy working with people tend to lean more towards the marketing or the human resource area. Next area might be management. So some of our graduates will manage small businesses, maybe like local area co-ops or elevators. Others will start in management trainee positions with large companies and corporations. And those graduates are usually start in more of a, just a very small area of the marketing plan, of management, where they're just responsible for a very small piece of that big picture. For example, we had a student who went to work for Frito-Lay in Topeka, and he was in their transportation management division. So he was responsible, and his only responsibility was getting that product to the retailer. Now, as our students gain experience, they move into those upper division marketing CEO type positions with companies and corporations as well. So a couple of trends that you're beginning to see here is there are opportunities in small towns and rural areas with small businesses. There are opportunities in urban areas with large companies or corporations. And you're going to get to decide how you want to use the degree. You're going to get to decide what areas really interest you and match those up, match your career goals with your interests, with your skill sets, with your talents. Another area would be government agencies, so U.S. Department of Agriculture, County Extension, all employ a fair number of our students. Other students too go on to become legislative aides or lobbyists for ag-related businesses or industries. Another area is the commodity areas, and that's kind of what you were looking at this morning too. This is one of the top career areas for our students right now, is the commodity trader or a commodity broker. These students started last year at about $60,000 to $70,000 a year. So this is where some of our top students went, was into the commodities area. Another real strong area right now too is the natural resource area, and you probably get this. We have a limited supply of natural resources, so government is putting regulations on businesses and industries to help protect those natural resources, and that comes at an economic cost, so we have to work to find that balance there. And then we always have a few students every year that go on to professional programs. It might be graduate school in ag econ or ag business or business. It might be veterinary school. It might be law school. Not limited to those, but that's primarily what we see. So that just gives you some idea of what our graduates do. And then the next question is, well, how do you get there? And in our department, we have two major areas that you can choose from. One would be ag business, one would be ag econ. Usually the first question is, well, what's the difference between the two of those? And actually the classes, the first couple of years that you take are pretty much the same, because they're foundation courses, they're foundation skills that all of our students need. And it's more when you get to be the junior year that you begin to kind of go off in your specific area of interest or your specific direction that matches more closely with what your career goals are. And oftentimes coming in as freshmen, students don't know exactly what they want to do, and that's fine and that's typical. So you have a little time to kind of get that figured out after you get here. But on the ag business side, we have 4 options. We have just the agribusiness degree. In this one, you are actually taking classes from the College of Business in addition to your agribusiness courses. We have an international agribusiness degree. Every major ag company today have offices all over the world. So anytime you bring that international piece to the table, you're certainly increasing your marketability, especially if you want to work for those large companies or corporations. In this one, you have to take a foreign language, which is different than any of the other options for our students. And then we have an ag sales degree. So if you're specifically interested in the marketing and the sales side of it, that agribusiness sales option would be good. And then the last one on the ag business side is the food industry option. So if you're more about the food product itself, that might be an option that you'd look at. And then the other side is the ag econ degree, which has a little bit more flexibility. On this side, this is where the natural resource option is. This is where the pre-vet and the pre-law options are. There's also a quantitative option if you're really interested in the numbers and the statistics. That would be one to consider. And then the farm management is on the ag econ side, and then the ag econ specialty. And the ag econ specialty probably is our most flexible one. You get to choose another area besides ag econ that you want to study too. So it might be agronomy, it could be animal science, could be Spanish, it could be history. You get to choose what that's going to be. So Agribusiness is our most popular option. The Ag Econ Specialty is the second most popular option. And then the third one would be the Farm and Ranch Management option. And again, in any of those, you're taking the same foundation courses, but then as you get to be a junior, senior, you begin to match it up more specifically with your area of interest as you begin to kind of narrow what your purpose or your focus is going to be. Skill sets that we're trying to develop, knowledge that we're trying to develop. We want you to have good analytical thinking skills, good problem solving skills, and you've been practicing those this morning in your workshop. We want you to have good communication skills, because that's certainly important in no matter what you're doing, and those are things that we're trying to develop for you. Our degrees are all 4 years, and our students, the majority of them, finish their college in 4 years. So that's a good thing too. As you get to that junior, senior year, you're going to pick from classes like Farm and Ranch Management, Ag Policy, Ag Finance, Ag Law, Commodity Futures, Ag Sales, lots of different, in addition to those foundation courses, lots of classes that you get to choose. Rich, do I have a little bit more time, or am I out of time here? Okay. I'll just spend a few more minutes talking about some.
Sorry, Sherry. I was talking with my mic off. I think we probably need to go ahead and close it here.
Okay. Okay.
So have any final summary or anything?
Yeah, I just like to say that my contact information is on that brochure that you got. Our website is there too. I'd like you to consider scheduling a prospective student visit. We're doing those virtually right now. After we get back on campus in the fall, you could schedule an on-campus visit or even an Ag Experience Day where you get to come and spend a whole day with a student. So if you have questions at all, I'd be excited to visit with you or answer those questions. So just shoot me an email. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you. Appreciate you being on. Okay, here's what y'all were waiting for. I'm pulling up a spreadsheet. And we have 3 winners here. I've got the first one here in blue. And let's just take a quick look. Carson, well done. You lost $109,000. But that's actually pretty good. It's the best of anybody that had a yield of 40. That's what you drew. And let's just look quick at what he did. He did buy insurance. He bought 70%. So he didn't buy the full insurance, but he bought some. Everybody, by the way, bought insurance, either 80 or 70%. That was interesting. For the first price opportunity, he didn't sell any then. That 290, he didn't like that, but he really liked that next one. So he put it in there and he bought all he could on that one. Now he only had 40 for the yield. So he only produced 40,000 bushels. He had forward contracted 50,000. But the good news here, he was able to buy that back for less than what he had contracted it for. It doesn't always work out that way. So he was the winner for 40. Let's move down here, and it looks like we might have a couple of brothers, Derek and Lakin. And we had one who drew 100 and the other one who drew 140. And so just taking a quick look at that, they both bought insurance. They bought the highest rate of insurance. They both sold 25,000 here when they had the first opportunity. And I just realized for B, they oversold it. And I something didn't work quite right to stop that from happening. So that's what we have. But we see that even with the average yield, and even with buying the insurance and stuff, he still lost 53,000, even with the average yield. It's a tough year right now. Now with the 140, and he sold more than we allowed him to actually on this one, the 65,000. It got too high. I should have checked that. He made 71,000. And so we're going to go ahead and declare him the winner, and I will have to fix that for tomorrow to make sure folks can't sell too much, but he got by with it. So with that, that is all we had. Robin, do you have anything to wrap up?
I don't think so. Thank you everyone for being on and participating today. And hopefully you learned a couple new key terms in the crowd.